I remember those family vacations at my aunt's beach house. The laughter, the sunshine, the ocean breeze. But for me, they were always tinged with a sense of not belonging. Year after year, I watched as my mother and siblings received invitations to these exclusive family gatherings while I was deliberately excluded. When I finally achieved success as a real estate investor, fate presented me with an opportunity. A beachfront resort near my family's vacation spot was for sale. I decided to buy it, not knowing my family would soon announce their annual beach trip. Before I tell you how I turned 8 years of rejection into the sweetest payback, drop a comment telling me where you are watching from, and hit subscribe to catch more stories of family karma. I grew up in a middle-class family in Seattle with my mother Julia and my 2 siblings, Sarah and David. We had a comfortable life, though nothing extravagant. My father was in the picture until I turned 14, when my parents decided to divorce. Dad moved cross-country to New York, and while he stayed in touch, our relationship became more distant with each passing year. The real anchor of our extended family was my Aunt Catherine, my mother's older sister. Unlike our modest lifestyle, Aunt Catherine had married into wealth. She and her husband owned a stunning beachfront property in California, a sprawling 6-bedroom mansion with private beach access. It was practically a resort itself. Every summer it became a family tradition to spend 2 weeks at Aunt Catherine's beach house. All the cousins, aunts, and uncles would gather there for what my mother called the highlight of the year. Those gatherings were indeed special, filled with barbecues, swimming, and late-night conversations on the deck under the stars. My grandfather was always my biggest supporter at these gatherings. While the other adults often congregated together, Grandpa would seek me out, asking about my interests and sharing his wisdom. He was a self-made businessman who had built a small construction company from nothing, and he loved to talk about investments and real estate. Property, Victor. He would tell me, his eyes twinkling with wisdom acquired over decades. Land is the one thing they are not making any more of. If you want security, invest in good property. I took his words to heart, soaking up everything he taught me about business persistence and integrity. When Grandpa passed away when I was 22, I was devastated. He left me a modest inheritance of $50,000, along with a handwritten note encouraging me to build something lasting. That inheritance would later become the foundation of my future, though I did not know it then. At 23, I had graduated college and landed my first serious job at a marketing firm in Seattle. The hours were demanding, especially for someone just starting their career and eager to prove themselves. When the annual family beach gathering was announced that summer, I checked my calendar and realized I had an unavoidable work commitment the first weekend of the 2-week vacation. I can drive down on Monday instead of Saturday, I told my mother over the phone. I will only miss 2 days of the gathering. My mother seemed understanding, but when I mentioned it to my cousins during a family dinner the following weekend, their reaction was unexpectedly cold. "Sure, your job is more important than family," my cousin Jake said with a smirk. "We get it." "That is not what I said," I protested, but the damage was already done. By the time the gathering rolled around, something had shifted. I arrived at the beach house that Monday afternoon, tired from the drive, but excited to see everyone. Instead of the warm welcome I expected, Aunt Catherine greeted me with a stiff hug and a comment about how nice of you to finally join us when it fits your schedule. Throughout that week, I noticed whispers among my cousins whenever I entered a room. Aunt Catherine, who had always been kind to me before, seemed influenced by her children becoming increasingly cold and critical of me. When I offered to help with dinner preparations, she dismissed me, saying, "We have our system. You would not understand since you are not usually here." Confused and hurt, I called my mother one evening from my room, explaining the situation. "You are being too sensitive, Victor," she said dismissively. "Catherine is just stressed about hosting everyone. Just try harder to fit in." What my mother failed to mention was that she had become increasingly dependent on Aunt Catherine's generosity. My aunt paid for my mother's flight to these gatherings, covered all expenses during the stay, and occasionally helped her financially throughout the year. I would discover this dependency later, but at the time, I only knew that my own mother was not defending me. The final blow that vacation came when I discovered through social media that the entire family had gone on a sunset cruise the very day I arrived. No one had bothered to tell me about it, and when I scrolled through the photos of their smiling faces, I felt a cold realization settle in my stomach. The exclusion had been deliberate. The following summer, I waited for the usual invitation to the beach house. Weeks passed, and while I heard my mother and siblings discussing their packing and plans, no invitation came for me. Finally, I called Aunt Catherine directly. "Oh, Victor," she said, sounding uncomfortable. "I thought your mother would have told you. We have limited space this year because some friends are joining us. Perhaps next summer." I swallowed my hurt and pride, responding politely before ending the call. Later that week, my sister Sarah let slip that there were actually 2 empty rooms at the beach house during the gathering. The limited space excuse had been exactly that, an excuse. When I confronted my mother about the situation, her response shocked me. "Victor, you need to understand how things work in this family," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Catherine has been very generous with me since your father left. She helps with bills sometimes. Having a good relationship with her benefits all of us. All of us except me, apparently." I responded, the betrayal cutting deep. "Do not be dramatic." My mother sighed. "You are an adult now with your own life and career. Your siblings and younger cousins still need these family connections." I walked away from that conversation with a clarity I had not possessed before. My own mother was willing to sacrifice her relationship with me to maintain financial support from her wealthy sister. Rather than causing a scene or begging for inclusion, I decided to focus my energy elsewhere. My grandfather's words about building something lasting echoed in my mind, and I turned my attention to my career and future. With the $50,000 my grandfather had left me, I began researching real estate investments. I started small, using the money as a down payment on a rundown duplex in an up-and-coming neighborhood. Working weekends and evenings, I renovated one unit at a time, living in one while renting the other. Within a year, the property had increased enough in value that I could refinance, pulling out enough equity to purchase a second property. I continued this process, slowly building a portfolio of rental properties while learning the business from every angle. The work was exhausting but fulfilling, giving me a sense of purpose during a time when my family relationships were crumbling. Over the next 3 years, I established myself as a serious real estate investor in the Seattle area. My business grew steadily, and I began to make connections with other investors and developers. Meanwhile, the annual beach house tradition continued without me. Each summer, I would see the photos posted online, the familiar faces of my family members enjoying the coastal paradise that was now forbidden to me. I made several attempts to reconcile with my aunt, sending birthday cards and Christmas gifts, even calling occasionally to check in. Each attempt was met with polite but distant responses. The message was clear: I was no longer considered an essential part of the family. What hurt more was watching my mother and siblings return from these gatherings with suntans and stories, carefully editing their accounts to avoid mentioning the fun they had without me. Eventually, my mother began making excuses for why I could not attend other family events throughout the year: holiday dinners, birthday celebrations, weekend barbecues. The beach house exclusion had somehow expanded to a year-round situation. "Your cousin Lucy is still uncomfortable around you after that argument you had," my mother would say, referencing a disagreement that never happened. "Or your aunt thinks it might be awkward since you have been away from family gatherings for so long." The excuses were transparent, but the message was consistent. I was not welcome. Even more painful was discovering that my mother had been accepting increasing amounts of financial help from Aunt Catherine. My siblings, noticing which way the wind was blowing, began to distance themselves from me, as well, afraid that too close an association would jeopardize their standing with our aunt. When I turned 28, my younger sister Sarah got engaged. The wedding was planned for the following summer, at none other than Aunt Catherine's beach house. I received an invitation just 2 weeks before the event, clearly a last-minute addition to the guest list. "We would love for you to come," Sarah told me over the phone, her voice betraying her discomfort. "But just so you know, space is tight with all the wedding party, so you will not be able to bring a +1. I later discovered that distant cousins I had met only once or twice had been permitted to bring their spouses and partners. Still, this was my sister's wedding, and I wanted to support her. I took time off work, booked an overpriced hotel room nearby, since staying at the beach house was not possible, and showed up with a generous gift and my best wishes. The ceremony was beautiful, set against the backdrop of the Pacific Ocean on Aunt Catherine's private beach. But the reception quickly revealed my status in the family. I was seated at a table far from the family section, with a group of my brother-in-law's work colleagues whom I had never met. Throughout the evening, I attempted to mingle with my relatives, only to be met with brief, uncomfortable conversations before they excused themselves. The breaking point came when I overheard a conversation while getting a drink at the bar. Around the corner out of sight but within earshot stood Aunt Catherine and several of my cousins. "I am surprised he had the nerve to show up at all," one cousin said. "Well, we could hardly not invite him to his own sister's wedding," Aunt Catherine replied, "though God knows he has made it clear over the years that his precious career is more important than family." "Did you see that watch he is wearing?" another cousin chimed in, trying to show off how well he is doing without us. I stood frozen, the ice in my drink, melting as quickly as any warmth I still felt toward these people. What hurt the most was spotting my mother standing silently within the same group, hearing these comments about her son, and saying nothing in my defense. Later, when I told my mother I was leaving early, she pulled me aside. "Victor, please do not make a scene," she whispered urgently. "This is your sister's special day." "I am not making a scene," I replied, my voice steady, despite the storm inside me. "I am just recognizing reality. This family has made it clear where I stand, and I am finally accepting it." As I drove back to my hotel room that night, I felt a strange mixture of pain and relief. The pain of final rejection was there, but also the relief of no longer needing to chase approval that would never come. Something shifted in me that night, something fundamental. After my sister's wedding, I stopped reaching out to family members altogether. No more holiday cards, no more attempts at reconciliation. Instead, I poured my energy into building my business and creating meaningful relationships with people who actually valued my presence in their lives. The transition was not easy. There were nights I lay awake, replaying family memories and wondering what I had done to deserve such exclusion. I experienced periods of depression and eventually sought therapy to process the family rejection that had become the defining feature of my relationship with my relatives. My therapist helped me see that sometimes family estrangement happens not because of something wrong with you, but because of dynamics beyond your control. In my case, my independence and success had somehow threatened the established order in my family, where my aunt's financial support created a power dynamic that required everyone else to play by her rules. Over the next 4 years, my mother occasionally contacted me, usually when she needed something alone. She never repaid advice about a financial matter, help moving into a new apartment. Each time I provided what assistance I could, but noticed that she showed little genuine interest in my life or well-being. My siblings were similarly distant. My brother David would call on my birthday conversations, lasting barely 5 minutes before he had to go. My sister Sarah sent generic holiday cards with no personal message. No invitations to family gatherings ever materialized, though social media showed me they continued regularly. My cousins' weddings, holiday celebrations, and of course the annual beach house summer vacation. During this period of family estrangement, I built a support network of close friends who became my chosen family. I dated occasionally, though the family rejection had left me with trust issues I was still working through. Most importantly, I continued to grow my real estate business, expanding from residential properties to commercial developments. By the time I turned 31, I had achieved significant financial success. My company had grown to include a team of 15 employees, and we were handling increasingly large development projects across the Pacific Northwest. I had personal wealth beyond what I had ever imagined possible when I started with my grandfather's modest inheritance. Yet despite this professional success, I still felt a hollow spot where family connections should have been. The call that changed everything came from my business partner, Logan, on a rainy Seattle afternoon. "Victor, there is a property I think you need to see," he said, excitement evident in his voice. A beachfront resort just hit the market in California. 15 rooms, private beach access, incredible location. When he sent over the details, I felt a jolt of recognition. The property was located just 2 miles from Aunt Catherine's beach house in the same exclusive coastal community. My first instinct was to pass on it. The area held too many painful associations. But the businessman in me recognized a potentially valuable opportunity. The current owners are divorcing and motivated to sell, Logan continued. We could get it for well below market value. After a few days of deliberation, I decided to visit the property. Walking the grounds of the small resort, feeling the same ocean breeze that I remembered from childhood summers, I was surprised to find that the painful memories had less power over me than I had anticipated. Instead, I saw the potential of the place, a boutique luxury resort in an area with high tourism and limited accommodations. Let us make an offer, I told Logan that evening. The negotiations moved quickly, and within 2 months, I was the proud owner of the Coastal Pines Resort. I immediately began renovations, transforming what had been a somewhat dated property into a modern luxury boutique hotel. I preserved the charm of the original structure while upgrading everything else. Marble bathrooms, premium bedding, a redesigned restaurant with a talented young chef, poached from a San Francisco establishment. By the following spring, the resort was fully operational and quickly developing a reputation as one of the most desirable accommodations in the area. The 15 rooms were regularly booked solid during the tourism season, and we had even been featured in several travel magazines. This success was personally satisfying, but I never expected the resort would intersect with my estranged family. That intersection came on an ordinary Tuesday in early May. My phone rang with a number I rarely saw anymore. My mother's. "Victor," she said. When I answered, her voice carrying that tone she used when she wanted something. "How have you been, sweetheart? It has been too long." "I am well," I replied neutrally. "What can I do for you, Mom?" After a moment of awkward small talk, she got to the point. "I am calling because there is a situation with Catherine. Her health has not been the best lately. Nothing serious," she quickly added, "but she has decided this summer might be the last big family gathering at the beach house. Everyone is coming for 2 weeks in July, a special reunion of sorts." I waited, wondering if after 8 years, this might actually be an invitation. But what followed crushed that brief hope. "We are all pitching in for a special gift for Catherine," my mother continued. "Something meaningful to commemorate all the wonderful summers. I wondered if you might contribute. Nothing too much, but it would be nice to have your name on the gift card." The irony was almost too much to bear. I was being asked to contribute to a gift, celebrating gatherings I had been deliberately excluded from for nearly a decade. "Who exactly is attending this special reunion?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. My mother listed off names, cousins, aunts, uncles, my siblings, even some family friends. Everyone, it seemed, except me. "And am I invited to this gathering?" I asked directly. The uncomfortable silence told me everything before she even spoke. "Well, sweetheart, you know how Catherine feels. And the house will be quite full, with everyone coming. Perhaps we can plan something, just the two of us, later in the summer." After ending the call with a non-committal response about the gift contribution, I sat in my office overlooking the Seattle skyline, a familiar hurt resurfacing. Out of curiosity, I checked my sister's social media and found exactly what I expected: elaborate posts about the upcoming epic family reunion at Aunt Catherine's, with comments from various family members expressing excitement. The exclusion was not just continuing, it was being celebrated. That evening, while reviewing the booking calendar for the resort, I noticed something that sparked an idea. The 2 weeks of the family gathering happened to be a period when the resort was still showing availability. We were typically booked solid during summer months, but a corporate group had recently canceled their reservation for that exact time frame due to budget cuts. My first thought was surprisingly generous. Perhaps I could offer the resort rooms to my family as an olive branch. Maybe having my own property in the area could finally change the dynamic. But then I remembered years of deliberate exclusion, of standing alone at my sister's wedding, while my family mocked me behind my back, of my mother's constant prioritization of my aunt's financial support over her relationship with her son. I decided on a different approach, one that would give me closure without being vindictive. I reached out to several corporate clients who frequently inquired about group accommodations for retreats and team-building events. I offered them a special package deal for those specific 2 weeks, a significant discount if they booked the entire resort, with added amenities like private beach access, personalized meal plans, and complimentary wine tastings. The offer was too good to pass up, and within days a tech company from San Francisco had booked the entire resort for their executive retreat. The deposit was substantial and non-refundable, securing the booking beyond any possibility of cancellation. 1 week before the big family gathering, my phone rang again. It was my mother, her voice tinged with panic. "Victor, there is a terrible situation with Catherine's house," she blurted without even saying hello. "The plumbing system has completely failed. There is water damage everywhere. The contractors say it will take weeks to repair, and everyone is arriving this weekend." I listened as she explained the crisis. Apparently, a major pipe had burst inside the walls of the beach house, causing extensive damage to multiple rooms. The house was currently uninhabitable, with no running water and electricity shut off in parts of the building for safety. "We have been calling every hotel and rental property in the area, but it is peak season. Everything is booked solid." My mother continued, her voice growing more frantic. "Then Sarah remembered you work in real estate now. Do you know of any properties in the area that might be available? Anything at all?" I took a deep breath, processing the situation. "Actually, I own a property in the area," I said calmly. "You do? What kind of property?" My mother sounded surprised and hopeful. "A resort. The Coastal Pines Resort, about 2 miles from Catherine's place. 15 rooms, private beach." There was a moment of shocked silence before my mother's voice returned, now excited. "That is perfect. Why did not you say something sooner? We need accommodation for 22 people. Can you book us in starting this weekend?" "The resort is fully booked," I replied. "A corporate group has reserved the entire property for the next 2 weeks, non-refundable." "But surely you can move them to another time," my mother pressed. "This is family, Victor. It is an emergency. Catherine is devastated about the gathering being ruined." I allowed a moment of silence before responding. "Just like your house, mine is out of room." The words hung in the air between us. I could almost see her expression as the implication of my statement sank in. "What is that supposed to mean?" she asked, her tone suddenly defensive. "It means I understand completely what it is like to be told there is no room for you when there actually is. It means I have experienced 8 years of being the only family member excluded from gatherings, being told there was not enough space when that was never the actual reason. Victor, that is not fair." "Those were different circumstances." "Were they?" I asked. "The difference is that my resort is actually fully booked. I have a business to run and obligations to clients who have paid deposits. I cannot and will not cancel their reservations." My mother's tone shifted from defensive to pleading. "We will pay whatever it costs. More than your corporate clients. Name your price." "This is not about money," I said firmly. "This is about years of being treated as if I do not matter to this family. Of watching my own mother choose financial support from her sister over her relationship with her son. Of being excluded from every significant family event for nearly a decade." I heard her intake of breath. For perhaps the first time, she was truly hearing me. "I did not realize you felt that way," she said quietly. "You never asked," I replied. "No one ever asked how it felt to be systematically cut out of the family, to see photos of gatherings I was not welcome at, to be seated with strangers at my own sister's wedding while the family I grew up with mocked me behind my back." There was a long silence before my mother spoke again. "I have made mistakes, Victor. I can see that now. I am not trying to punish anyone," I clarified. "I am running a business, and I have obligations to my clients. But I am also no longer accepting the role this family has assigned me. I deserve better, and I have built better for myself." After ending the call, I felt a strange sense of peace. The conversation had been difficult but necessary, an honest acknowledgement of years of hurt and exclusion. I had stated my boundaries clearly without seeking revenge. The fact that the family's gathering was now complicated was simply the natural consequence of their own actions over the years. In the days that followed, several family members reached out directly, something that had rarely happened in years. My sister Sarah called awkwardly, attempting to reminisce about childhood memories before asking if I could do anything about the resort situation. My cousin Jake, one of those who had been most vocal in excluding me, suddenly found my number to express how great it would be to reconnect. I remained polite but firm with everyone. I explained that the resort was genuinely booked and that I had business obligations I could not break. I did, however, offer to help them find alternative accommodations in nearby towns, providing a list of contacts in the hospitality industry I had developed. Most surprisingly, Aunt Catherine herself called the first direct conversation we had had in years. "Victor," she said, her voice sounding older than I remembered, "I owe you an apology. I allowed petty grievances and misunderstandings to create a rift that should never have happened. Hearing about your success with the resort despite being excluded from the family has made me realize how poorly we have treated you." While I appreciated her words, I did not rush to offer easy forgiveness. Years of hurt could not be erased with a single phone call motivated by a crisis. Instead, I thanked her for reaching out and suggested that perhaps when things settled, we could begin a conversation about rebuilding our relationship on healthier terms. In the end, the family split up for their gathering. Some stayed in hotels in towns up to an hour away, while others rescheduled their trips for later in the year. The epic reunion that had been planned dissolved into smaller gatherings, and compromise is a fitting metaphor for what had happened to our family bonds over the years. Meanwhile, I focused on ensuring my actual paying guests had an exceptional experience at the resort. The tech company executives enjoyed their stay immensely, and their retreat was such a success that they booked again for the following year before checking out. The aftermath of that summer brought unexpected changes to my family dynamics. With the leverage of financial support diminished by Aunt Catherine's health concerns, and the undeniable success I had built independently, the power balance shifted. For the first time in 8 years, I was approached with genuine interest rather than obligation or need. My healing journey had begun years earlier, through therapy and the creation of my own support network. But the resolution with my family added another dimension to that healing. I did not rush to forgive and forget, but instead established clear boundaries for any rebuilding of relationships. I made it clear that respect was non-negotiable, and that I would no longer accept being treated as an afterthought. Slowly, I began cautiously rebuilding connections with my siblings on my own terms. Sarah and I started with occasional lunch meetings when she visited Seattle, gradually working our way toward more meaningful conversations. David and I found common ground in a shared interest in hiking, taking day trips that allowed us to reconnect without the pressure of the larger family dynamic. My relationship with my mother required more time and more direct conversations about the past. To her credit, she eventually acknowledged the choices she had made and the hurt they had caused. While our relationship would never be what it might have been, we found a new equilibrium based on mutual respect rather than obligation. Aunt Catherine's health eventually improved, but the plumbing disaster at the beach house seemed to have knocked something loose in her perspective as well. She sold the property the following year, claiming it was too much to maintain, though I suspected the real reason was that it no longer represented the family unity it once had. As for me, the resort became not just a successful business venture, but a symbol of my resilience. I found it fitting that in the very community where I had been made to feel unwelcome, I had created a place where others felt valued and appreciated. I took particular satisfaction in creating an environment where every guest was treated with the respect I had been denied. I used a portion of the resort's profits to establish a scholarship program for students from families experiencing estrangement or difficult dynamics. The program provided not just financial support, but mentorship and community, things I had had to find on my own journey. Through this experience, I learned that sometimes the most powerful response to rejection is not revenge, but success and self-worth. I discovered that family can be defined by how people treat you rather than simply by blood connection. Most importantly, I found that creating your own path can lead to destinations far more fulfilling than those you might have reached while following someone else's expectations. The greatest lesson I took from 8 years of exclusion was the importance of creating spaces where others feel included. Whether in my business, my friendships, or the new traditions I created with my chosen family, I made it a priority to ensure no one felt like an outsider the way I once had. If you have ever felt excluded by those who should have valued you most, know that your worth is not determined by their inability to see it. Building your own success is not just about proving them wrong. It is about proving to yourself that you deserved better all along. The most satisfying revenge is not making others suffer, but refusing to let their treatment define your future. Have you ever experienced family exclusion or had to create boundaries with toxic relatives? Share your story in the comments below. If this resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories of overcoming family dynamics with dignity rather than drama. And if you know someone struggling with family rejection, share this video to remind them that creating their own path can lead to the most beautiful destinations. Thank you for listening, and remember, your worth is never determined by those who fail to see it.